The Passion of our Lord Jesus Christ, according to Matthew.
And Jesus said to his disciples,
You know that after 2 days the Passover is coming, and the Son of Man will be handed over to be crucified.
Then the chief priests and the elders of the people gathered in the palace of the high priest Caiaphas, and they conspired to arrest Jesus by subtlety and kill him.
Kill him.
Not during the festival, or the people will riot.
Now, while Jesus was at Bethany in the house of Simon the leper, a woman came to him with an alabaster jar of very costly oil, and she poured it on his head as he sat at the table. But when the disciples saw it, they were angry and said,
Why this waste?
This oil could have been sold for a large sum.
And the money given to the poor.
Why do you trouble the woman? She has performed a good service for me. For you always have the poor with you, but you will not always have me. By pouring this ointment on my body, she has prepared me for burial. Truly, I tell you, whenever the good news is proclaimed in the whole world, she will be remembered for what she has done.
Then one of the 12, who was called Judas Iscariot, went to the chief priests and said,
What will you give me if I betray him to you?
30 pieces of silver?
30 pieces of silver.
And from that moment, Judas began to look for an opportunity to betray him.
On the first day of unleavened bread, the disciples came to Jesus, saying,
Where do you want us to make the preparations for you to eat the Passover?
Go into the city to a certain man and say to him, The teacher says, my time is near. I will keep the Passover at your house with my disciples.
So the disciples did as Jesus had directed them, and they prepared the Passover meal. When it was evening, he took his place with the 12, and while they were eating, he said,
Truly, I tell you, one of you will betray me.
And they became greatly distressed.
Surely,
Not
Lord.
I, Lord.
The one who has dipped his hand into the bowl with me will betray me. The Son of Man goes as it is written of him, but woe to that one by whom the Son of Man is betrayed. It would have been better for that one not to have been born.
Surely not I, Rabbi.
As you say.
While they were eating, Jesus took a loaf of bread, and after blessing it, he broke it, and he gave it to the disciples and said,
Take, eat. This is my body.
And then he took a cup, and after giving thanks, he gave it to them, saying,
Drink from it, all of you, for this is my blood of the covenant, which is poured out for many for the forgiveness of sins. I tell you, I will never drink of it, the fruit of the vine, again, until that day when I drink it new with you in my Father's kingdom.
And they went out to the Mount of Olives.
You will all become deserters because of me this night, for it is written, I will strike the shepherd, and the sheep of the flock will be scattered. But after I am raised up, I will go ahead of you to Galilee.
Peter said to him,
Though all become deserters because of you, I will never desert you.
Peter, truly, I tell you, this very night before the cock crows, you will deny me 3 times.
Even though I must die with you, I will not deny you.
Then Jesus went with them to a place called Gethsemane, and he said to his disciples,
Sit here while I go over there and pray.
He took with him Peter and the 2 sons of Zebedee, James and John, and began to be grieved and agitated.
I am deeply grieved, even to death. Remain here and stay awake with me.
And going a little further, he threw himself on the ground and prayed,
My Father, if it is possible, let this cup pass from me, yet not what I want, but what you want.
And he came to the disciples and found them sleeping. And he said to Peter,
So, could you not stay awake with me 1 hour? Stay awake and pray that you may not come into the time of trial. The spirit indeed is willing, but the flesh is weak.
Again, he went away for a second time and prayed.
My Father, if this cannot pass unless I drink it, your will be done.
Again he came and found them sleeping, for their eyes were heavy. So leaving them again, he went away and prayed for the third time, saying the same words.
My Father, if this cannot pass unless I drink it, your will be done.
Then he came to the disciples and said to them,
Are you still sleeping and taking your rest? See, the hour is at hand, and the Son of Man is betrayed into the hands of sinners. Get up, let us be going. See, my betrayer is at hand.
While he was still speaking, Judas arrived, and with him was a large crowd with swords and clubs from the chief priests and elders of the people.
The one I will kiss is the man. Arrest him. Greetings, Rabbi.
Friend, what have you come to do?
And then they came and laid hands on Jesus and arrested him. And one of those with Jesus put his hand on his sword, drew it, and struck the slave of the high priest, cutting off his ear.
Oh,
Put your sword back into its place, for all who take the sword will perish by the sword. Do you think that I cannot appeal to my Father, and he will at once send me more than 12 legions of angels? But how then would the scripture be fulfilled, which says it must happen in this way? Have you come out with swords and clubs to arrest me, as though I were a bandit? Day after day I sat in the temple teaching, and you did not arrest me. But all this has taken place so that the scriptures of the prophets may be fulfilled.
Then all the disciples deserted him and fled.
Those who had arrested Jesus took him to Caiaphas, the high priest, in whose house the scribes and the elders had gathered. But Peter was following him at a distance, as far as the courtyard of the high priest, and going inside, he sat with the guards in order to see how this would end.
Now, the chief priests and the whole council were looking for false testimony against Jesus so that they might put him to death. But they found none, though many false witnesses came forward. At least 2 came forward and said,
This man said, I am able to destroy the temple of God and to build it in 3 days.
Have you no answer?
what it is that they testify against you?
but Jesus was silent. And then the high priest said to him,
I put you under oath before the living God. Tell us if you are the Messiah, the Son of God.
You have said so, but I tell you, from now on you will see the Son of Man seated at the right hand of power and coming on the clouds of heaven.
He has blasphemed.
Why do we still need witnesses?
You have now heard his blasphemy.
what's your verdict?
He deserves
Crucify him.
Crucify him.
him.
And they spat in his face and struck him, and some slapped him, saying,
Prophesy to us, you Messiah. Who struck you?
Now Peter was sitting outside in the courtyard. A servant came to him and said,
I don't know what you're talking about.
You were here with Jesus the Galilean too.
but he denied it before all of them, saying,
Yeah, I don't know what you're talking about.
when he went out to the porch, another servant girl saw him, and she said,
This man was with Jesus of Nazareth.
again, he denied it with an oath.
Look, I don't even know who the hell you're talking about.
You must be from Nazareth. You've got that funny accent.
Then he began to curse, and he swore an oath.
And going, damn, I tell you, I don't know the freaking guy.
At the moment the cock crowed, Peter remembered what Jesus had said.
For the cock crows, you will deny me 3 times.
And he went out and wept bitterly.
When morning came, all the chief priests and the elders of the people conferred together against Jesus in order to bring about his death. They bound him, led him away, and handed him over to Pilate, the governor.
When Judas, his betrayer, saw that Jesus was condemned, he repented and brought back the 30 pieces of silver to the chief priests and the elders and said,
I have sinned by betraying innocent blood.
What is that to us? See to it yourself.
And he went out and hanged himself.
But the chief priests, taking the pieces of silver, said,
It's not lawful to put in the treasury, since it's blood money.
Let us use the silver to buy a potter's field as a place to bury foreigners.
For this reason, that field has been called the field of blood to this day.
Then was fulfilled what had been spoken through the prophet Jeremiah.
And they took the 30 pieces of silver, on whom some of the people of Israel had set a price, and they gave them for the potter's field, as the Lord commanded.
Now Jesus stood before the governor, and the governor asked him,
Are you the king of the Jews?
You say so.
When he was accused by the chief priests and elders, he did not answer.
Do you not hear how many accusations they make against you?
Are you the Son of Man?
Or the Son of God.
You said you'd destroy the temple.
And rebuild it in 3 days?
But he gave him no answer, not even to a single charge, so that the governor was greatly amazed.
Now at the
festival, the governor was accustomed to release a prisoner for the crowd, anyone whom they wanted. At that time, they had a notorious prisoner called Jesus Barabbas. So after they had gathered, Pilate said to them,
Which do you want me to release for you? Jesus Barabbas or Jesus who is called the Messiah?
For Pilate realized that it was out of jealousy that they had handed Jesus over. While he was sitting on the judgment seat, his wife sent word to him.
Have nothing to do with that innocent man, for today I have suffered a great deal because of a dream about him.
Now the chief priests and the elders persuaded the crowd to ask for Barabbas and to have Jesus killed. The governor again said to them,
Which of the two do you want me to release for you?
Barabbas.
Barabbas!
Then what should I do with Jesus who is called the Messiah?
Crucify him!
Nail him.
Why? What evil has he done?
Crucify him!
So when Pilate saw that he could do nothing, but rather than that a riot was beginning, he took some water and washed his hands before the crowd and said,
I am innocent of this man's blood. See to it yourselves.
His blood be on us, on our children.
So Pilate released Barabbas for them. After flogging Jesus, he handed him over to be crucified.
And the soldiers of the governor took Jesus into the governor's headquarters, and they gathered the whole company around him. They stripped him and put a scarlet robe on him, and twisting some thorns into a crown, they put it on his head, put a reed in his right hand, and knelt before him, and mocked him, saying,
Hail, King of the Jews!
You
They
king.
spat on him and took the reed and struck him on the head. After mocking him, they stripped him of the robe and put his own clothes on him. Then they led him away to crucify him.
As they went out, they came across a man from Cyrene named Simon, and they compelled this man to carry the cross. And when they came to a place called Golgotha, that means place of the skull, they offered Jesus wine to drink mixed with gall, but when he tasted it, he would not drink it.
And when they had crucified him, they divided his clothes amongst themselves by casting lots. And then they sat down there and kept watch over him. Over his head, they put the charge against him, which read,
"This is Jesus, King of the Jews."
Then 2 bandits were crucified with him, one on his right and one on his left. Those who passed by derided him, shaking their heads and saying,
You who would destroy the temple and rebuild it in 3 days, save yourself.
If you are the Son of God, come down from the cross.
He saved others. He cannot save himself.
He is the King of Israel. Let him come down from the cross now, and we will believe him.
Yeah.
He trusts in God. Let God deliver him now, if he wants to. For he said, I am God's son.
The bandits who were crucified with him taunted him in the same way.
Anything you can do on our behalf?
Put in a good word for your father.
Okay.
Call!
From noon on, darkness came over the land until about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Jesus cried with a loud voice,
Eli, Eli, lema sabachthani.
that is, my God, why have you forsaken me?
When some of the bystanders heard it, they said,
This man is calling for Elijah.
At once, one of them ran and got a sponge, filled it with sour wine, put it on a stick, and gave it to him to drink. But the others said,
Okay, wait. Let's see whether Elijah will come to save him.
Then Jesus cried again with a loud voice
Ah!
and breathed his last.
At that moment, the curtain of the temple was torn from top to bottom. The earth shook, the rocks split, the tombs also were opened, and many bodies of the saints who had fallen asleep were raised. After his resurrection, they came out of the tombs and into the city and appeared to many.
Now when the centurion and those with him who were keeping watch over Jesus saw the earthquake and what took place, they were terrified. And they said,
Truly, this man was God's son.